Okay, I will now call to order tonight's meeting of the Evanston Preservation Commission. We have a quorum of 7 commissioners present. The City of Evanston Preservation's ordinance empowers this body to oversee and administer the community's historic preservation program. During our monthly public meetings, we encourage public participation, afford due process through public hearings on proposed landmark designations and applications for certificates of appropriateness, and discuss ways to advance long-range planning goals beyond case review. We ask anyone who wishes to address the commission to sign in and indicate the discussion item, designation, or application to be addressed. We ask anyone who wishes to address the commission, I just read that. The first order of business tonight will be public comment on items listed under discussion on the meeting agenda. For old and new business, I will ask staff to read each case into the record. Once the case has been read into the record, the applicant presents an overview of the proposal, including evidence and testimony that support the applicable review standards being met. Commissioners will then ask questions of the applicant. Following the questioning period, members of the public may speak toward the application, keeping their comments to 3 minutes or less. Following public comment, the applicant will have the opportunity to respond to any evidence or testimony against the application as it relates to the review standards. The commission then closes the record and proceeds to deliberation and a motion to approve the proposal or approve with conditions. A simple majority of the quorum present is required for a motion to carry. After old and new business conclude, the commission considers the previous public meetings minutes and then discusses actions pertaining to long-range planning goals. The first order of business is public comment. These are comments on something that is not old business or new business. That's all we have tonight. No. It's if.
Oh God, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry.
In other words, the public comment is not on actual business items. It's on things that are not business items. If you have a comment about business items, please wait until that business item comes up and then make that comment. Okay. Do we have anybody for public comment? Mm-hmm. If you could please just let us know your name.
Sure.
And then we'll start you have 3 minutes.
Okay.
We'll start the clock.
My name is Stephanie Salem. In preparing for our proposal, in preparing for the sale of my grandparents' home in North Evanston, and just in my own interest, I did some research on the Historic Preservation Commission and the process involved. I affirm that there is great value in recognizing the historic value and the elements in our community and helping them make a part of Evanston's future as well. While taking part in the presentation and deliberation of my own project, as well as reviewing previous notes and issues taken up by the commission, there is an element of sensitivity in consideration that I feel like is missing on some occasions. While there are many great things about seeing and preserving history, it is also important to recognize while some of those things came to be. Class and race heavily played a role in the development and redevelopment of certain parts of Evanston. Not all neighborhoods in Evanston have homes that fall under the purview of the commission for some of those reasons. So, for example, the reason coach houses were traditionally at the back of properties is because that's where the workers and not the homeowners resided. And that practice makes sense for some properties at some times, but it does not make sense for all. In a similar field, realtors now list the largest bedroom in a home as a primary bedroom and no longer list the label as belonging to a master. That term was not used by most today to affirm values of slavery, but that is still the legacy and from which the term resided. Similarly, the commissioners have discussed the importance of discussions with neighbors to avoid confusion and anxiety related to proposals. In a perfect world, those conversations would be easily to have. But the reality is that is not always true. And so I challenge the commission to be as mindful as possible as the values presented and the underlying sentiments in discussions around people's projects, homes, and neighbors. In an article I read in the Evanston Roundtable from 2022, it is clear that the commission wants to reach more people, to be accessible to different families and their projects, and make their process as approachable and clear as possible. I think as the Evanston community continues to evolve, that is a great and ambitious goal, but I also think there is still work to be done to make that as accessible to everyone as possible.
Thank you very much. Excuse me. Does anyone else have anything to say? Are you signed up to speak?
No, but the live stream's not working.
Okay, thank you. Are you signed up? Go ahead.
Hi, my name's Omar Salem, and I'm not here to speak about my project, which you'll hear from me later as an applicant. I'm here to apologize for comments that I made at the commission meeting last month. Specifically, I said something along the lines of, we're not going to rent our coach house to Northwestern students. And my intent in saying that was to put my neighbors at ease. But I worry that could really come across as harmful to Northwestern students or college students in general, and I don't think that's a fair thing to say. Our family's intention is to never rent it to anyone. All right, this is for our family and for us, but I still shouldn't have phrased it that way, and so I want to apologize for that. Intent versus impact is something that comes up a lot in my work as a public school teacher, a union professional development director, my previous role as an Evanston Equity and Empowerment Commissioner, and my current role as a District 65 school board member. It's important to remember and think that, it's important to think about the impact of our words and our actions regardless of our intent. And so I'd like to ask that every person in the room do the same thing, thinking about last month's meeting and about tonight's. Thank you.
Is there anyone else that's signed up to speak on things that are not on old or new business? Okay. Seeing none, we'll just wait until staff is available to read the next item into the record. Okay, I'm told that there is no public comment in writing, so now we will move on to old business. Could staff please read the next item into the record?
Case number 24, PRES 0046, 1525 Judson Avenue in the Lakeshore Historic District. Anthony Hertig, architect and applicant on behalf of the homeowner, requests a certificate of appropriateness to demolish an existing detached two-car garage and construct a new detached two-story accessory dwelling unit with ground floor parking in the rear yard. The applicable standards are demolition 1 through 5 and construction 1 through 14 and 16. This case was continued from May 14th.
Okay,
Anthony?
is the applicant here? Come on up. If you could please just remind us of your name.
I'm Anthony Hertig, and I'm the architect for the Salem family. And thank you for hearing us again. I think just about everyone was here last month. Following the proceedings from last month, we had some lengthy discussions about how to move forward, and we thought it was important to both consider the Salem's neighbors' concerns and also the Commission's concerns. And in response, what we did was two things essentially to the proposed project. One is we moved the coach house a bit to the north, away from the adjacent home. And the second thing we did was we reduced the height of the proposed coach house ADU by 1 foot. That the height of the floor to ceiling in the preliminary proposal was 9 feet on the second floor for the Salem's, and I reduced it to 8 feet to help minimize the scale. Otherwise, there were no changes to the plan. It is a very tight plan, and the drawing that the other thing I did between the last meeting and this one is did extensive research on site to do the best job I could documenting the two neighbors to the south and placing the proposed ADU in the location, the revised location with the lower height, so that there could be a reasonable assessment of the scale and space, although it is a challenge because there is extensive foliage in the area, and it's just really hard to get a sense of the spaces between the structures. But this is about as good a job without showing all the foliage, which, you know, could be there or not there in a week or a month or a year. So that's about as good as an orthographic projection can be.
I just want to, for the record, this is page 16 in the packet that we're looking at on screen.
That's actually the extent of my remarks, and I'm hoping that the board, the commission will consider this, you know, with all, try to be as respectful as possible to the their charge and the context with respect to scale, proportion, et cetera.
Thank you very much. So this is our opportunity to ask questions of the applicant. Commissioners, it's not debate between us, it's questions for the applicant. Go ahead. Is it not working?
Yeah.
Oh, there.
You mentioned that you have reduced the floor to ceiling on the second floor by a foot. What's the floor to ceiling on the first floor in the garage?
It's 8 feet.
What?
8 feet.
8 feet, okay.
The structure between first and second floor is a 14-inch truss, so that it can span the entire width of the garage, so it can be open span.
Was that it? Commissioner Cohen? Was that it? Okay. Did anyone else have any questions? Go ahead.
If you said it, I apologize, Tony. The dimension on the context plan, site plan, says 11 feet 6 inches from the lot line to the neighbor. Did you have a plat of survey, or where does that dimension come from?
Well, that actually was. Is it okay? I mean, I don't have much choice, but I had a couple of conversations with Kate Sterling between the end of the last meeting and as I embarked on documenting everything, and he had some information from some, available to him that I didn't have access to.
So is this GIS or?
It's from, so first was looking at the GIS building footprint layer, and it comes out at about 11 feet, and then verifying that internally with a copy of the plat of survey that was from 2002 under a permit.
Okay. So it is.
That has it at 11 and a half feet. There's a projecting chimney that reduces it by, I think, 1.5 feet or something from about the center of the house.
Okay. Thank you.
Oh, sorry.
Go ahead.
Yeah, I have another question. Given that the things which I think are at issue is the volume of the house and its scale in relation to things adjacent to it, and then the proximity to the north side of the adjacent house, I'm wondering how you came up with the 11-foot, 10 1/4 dimension between the existing house and the proposed ADU, when in fact the code requires a minimum of 10 feet.
Yeah. That was based on conversations I had with the Salems, and we knew that that 10-foot requirement was in the ordinance, and the preliminary proposal showed the ADU at 3 feet from the lot line, which is a minimum also setback. So we tried to find a compromise to, as a gesture for the neighbors. Obviously, as that ADU moves north, it is encroaching on the space, the yard area, but we tried to find the right balance. I think they might be amenable to a little bit more, but we're, all we could get out of it now is about another 22 inches.
Did you have any follow-up question, Stuart?
No, only that the proposition is like being between a rock and a hard place, given the uniqueness of the site and the fact that you're dealing with zoning setbacks and that in fact it's a non-conforming site to begin with.
So I do have a question. I guess one of the neighbors requested an updated zoning analysis, and so when in reviewing that, on the bottom of the table, it says that it's 1,000 square feet is for an accessory dwelling unit, right? And so I'm just wondering why the first floor bathroom was not included in the calculation of the square footage of the house, or what, so.
The
Because isn't that considered part of the living space? So I'm just wondering.
My understanding, based on the zoning and the zoning analysis that was completed, was that what was proposed was acceptable. The Salems had asked for having a bathroom on the lower level for, returning from the beach and cleaning up, or, any other
I
number
have
of
no
things.
problem
But I don't think there's an issue with the zoning. It was,
Okay.
the analysis was conducted and it was approved.
Other questions from commissioners? I have a question. Our job here is to review projects according to the standards for review. And there were two standards that came up last time. They were under the standards for construction. They were number 5, rhythm of spacing and structures on the streets, and number 10, scale of a structure. So I wonder if you could very briefly just address those directly. You can start with either one of those if you want. Rhythm of spacing and structures on streets, number 5, or scale of a structure.
Sure. I think with respect to rhythm, the spacing on the street is fairly regular, but it's extremely challenging to get a sense of it in the context in reality when you're on site for a number of reasons. One is the amount of foliage there. Now we know that may or may not change at some point, but the other is one other important concern, I think, is that as you move a little bit to the next house to the south, suddenly you've got an 8-foot-high masonry wall that runs some 100 feet farther south, and then it drops down to about 3.5 feet. And it just really obscures and a sense of what's behind, and that sense of scale and rhythm that you see in so many other blocks, especially in the neighborhood. But on that street, on that side of the street, it's really just those 4 houses that you can assess, and I think that the rhythm is fairly regular. In terms of scale, I think I did the best I could to minimize the scale of the ADU so that it would be subordinate to the primary structures that flank it.
Thank you.
Sure.
Okay.
Sorry, Carl, I was trying to get an answer because it wasn't, the zoning analysis was not fresh in my mind, but I do believe that the bathroom is included in the calculations. The ADU is 818 square feet on the top floor, and the zoning analysis identifies the total area of the ADU being 925 square feet.
It says the proposed ADU is 925 square feet, including the stair between floors 1 and 2, and excluding the first floor bathroom. And so I was just saying, roughly, I think it's about 12 feet by 7 feet is the space of the bathroom, and so that's 84 square feet, and then you add it.
It seems like it's at 920.
Just under the 1,000 mark. So
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Oh,
No, no.
okay, thank you very much.
Okay, thank you.
The next thing on the agenda after the applicant gives their presentation and the commissioners ask our questions is now members of the public may speak to this particular item and not other things under other parts of the agenda, please. So is there anyone who has signed up? Do you have the list? Okay. I have, first of all, Donna Harrison. Is Donna Harrison here? So we have to make sure that it's recorded. So is the question, do you want to defer?
I want to speak. I didn't want to speak first.
You don't want to speak first. Okay. Mitchell Harrison?
Yeah, I also feel the same way.
You don't want to speak now? Okay. That comes, okay. So just to be clear, these are members of the public, and then there's something called parties in opposition, which comes after the members of the public. So they, so the way we can do this is that we can, even though you, Donna Harrison and Mitchell Harrison are signed up to speak as individually as members of the public, what we can do is put you with parties in opposition. Is that what you're asking? Okay. All right. Then the next person then on the list is Mike Myers. Okay, so you are going to ask to be with parties in opposition? Okay. Stephanie Salem? Okay, so that was your comment from before, okay. Right. And Omar Salem, that was your comment, okay. Vince Gerasil, sorry. Vince Gerasil. The item of interest is listed here as parking. I think maybe perhaps that's a different meeting. Do we have the wrong meeting, perhaps, for this person? Okay. The next person on the list is Jeff Smith. Is Jeff Smith here? Would you like to be with parties in opposition as well? Okay. Is there anyone else listed to speak under members of the public for old business? Did we get anything in writing that we need to acknowledge? Okay. All right. In that case, we will move to parties in opposition. I'm sorry? Yeah. Who's going to present that? All right. Do I call him by name? It's Jeff Smith. Okay. I'm told that Jeff Smith, will you be speaking first for parties in opposition? And I'm told that you say that you need about 10 minutes? Okay. So we'll put 10 minutes on the timer for you.
Members of the commission, thank you, and sorry for the confusion on the sign-up. There wasn't a separate sheet for parties in opposition. So, and thank you for your service. And this is unpaid, and to the staffers who are here or watching, even though it's after hours and it's part of their job, it's still after hours. And just for context, I was on the board of Citizens Greener Evanston with the fellow who founded the Evanston Development Corporation, and I served on the board of an affordable housing organization in Evanston. I'm fully in support of sustainability and affordability, but what's primarily before this commission, of course, is whether or not it meets the standards of the preservation ordinance. And so I've submitted on behalf of my clients, Don and Mitchell Harrison, a number of objections to the project, and I'm going to try and summarize those. But my clients don't believe that this is congruent with the neighborhood as it's intended to be preserved by the historic preservation ordinance. And it is, as you recognize, kind of an unusual property. Corner lots are always a little problematic, but this one really does face on Judson Street. You've got the front door there. It's labeled as the front entry according to the historic survey of the property. When the house was last listed for sale, the front door was described as the entry hall, and on the historic photo that's in your own packet, you can see that when it was built in the 1950s, there was actually no door at all on the north side that faces Davis. So that was never the front door or the front yard. This was an estate that was subdivided, and Judson was a long north-south street and a desirable address, and people want to be on Judson, have that cachet. Obviously, houses built in the 1930s aren't the same as Victorians built in the 1880s, but they have their charms. There's been some actually positive improvements to 1525 over the years. But picket fencing was added to the north side, which, as you probably know, it can only be done on a side yard on a corner lot. So. And the applicants themselves, if you look on page 2 of the application, which is at page 8 of the packet, designate the location of the garage to be replaced and they check that in the side yard. And all this is relevant, not that this commission has the jurisdiction to determine zoning, but it suggests to me that where the existing garage is really is side yard. Now, lawyers get paid to argue over semantics and dance on the heads of pins. But what's relevant here is the way that it fits in with the neighborhood and the intent of the ADU ordinance. Mayor Biss had an editorial in the Chicago Tribune saying, yes, in my backyard. Well, most backyards face an alley or are away from the street. Most backyards don't back up directly, especially to a house that faces the street and confront it. So you have very rarely a situation where you would have an ADU being built in a situation like this, and I don't think the drafters are really contemplating that, because there's a conflict, and the ADU ordinance itself says you shouldn't be locating it in an interior side yard. And as I explained a little bit in the statement I submitted to the commission, one of the reasons that this is a historic district is because it was Evanston had played an important role in community planning throughout the country by being an early adopter of zoning. And while zoning, like anything else, a hammer or a truck, a car, can be used for nefarious purposes. You go back to the history of it and look what's in the written record and what was published throughout the country, and the cities that followed Evanston as a model, and municipal leaders from Evanston went all around the country talking about this zoning. The idea was to prevent some of the unhealthy situations that had occurred in unregulated cities, and this followed on the heels of the last great pandemic in America, the Spanish flu, and so. One of the reasons this Lakeshore Historic District even exists is because of single-family zoning. And you go up and down Judson Street or Hinman and Forest, et cetera, and there's a relative dearth of multi-unit housing. There is, I believe, across the street on Judson, and my clients can testify to that, a ADU that's been added, but it's again on an alley. So what you've got here is an architectural anomaly from the 1950s that, however, at the moment is not interfering with my clients' quality of life. They get to have the light and air that zoning was intended to protect, because there was no protection at common law to speak of, and they look out their windows and they see trees and sky and air, and that's going to be replaced with what I would call hardy board. I guess there's nicer names for cement board cladding, but and it's got its utilities as a building material, but it's not what you expect when you buy into this neighborhood in a preservation district. And so the garage is already a one-off to the general rhythm of the street, and having a two-story structure with a roof on top of it would be the only such garage among relating structures. And the only one that I could find in a relatively quick look, and I'd encourage the commission to go out and drive around themselves, you won't find anything, I don't think, so close to the lot line on a street-facing side to any other house. There are garages that face the street, but they're set back. The way that Evanston words the code is that it's in the rear yard, but it's also it's where the side yard and the rear yard essentially intersect, and garages, if they have curb cuts, which they have to if there's no alley, are stuck in the back. The few that are up, even with houses in this neighborhood, have not been converted into ADUs. They don't have this height and mass, so it really interferes with the rhythm of the spacing on the street, and it doesn't meet the scale standard because it would crowd the house at 1519 Judson, which already has a house directly back of it because you don't have an alley, and it would crowd the trees that are there. It would probably also damage them. I don't know that that's within the commission's jurisdiction, but objects are supposed to be protected by Standard 10 as well, and we've seen many instances in Evanston where you can't dig down. So the location and the mass aren't necessary for an ADU. You could attach the ADU to the principal structure. If you look at the city's own guidelines for ADUs, they have about half a dozen ways of doing so, but they all show them on an interior lot that's long, narrow, with the one end on the street, one end on an alley. Not this kind of situation. I would suggest for this kind of situation, it really should be attached to the principal structure, and then you'd have the same encroachment on the yard, just be in a different place. What's happening here is that the privacy of my clients is going to be sacrificed so that the privacy of an interior patio can be preserved. And while equity was and should be a driver of the ADU ordinance,
1 minute, Jeff.
It's kind of difficult to talk about that when we're talking about a house that's already probably valued at well over $1 million and more valuable than my client's house, and more value is going to be extracted out of that property through this construction at the expense of my clients. So I don't think the equity analysis weighs in that favor, and we don't know who's going to live in this in the future. God bless the Salems. May everybody live a long life, but properties get sold, and they could be rented to anybody. So I'd like to, I've submitted some pictures. My clients have additional pictures. I would just like to ask them as my only question to them if they would attest to the accuracy, to the best of their knowledge, of the statements that we've submitted to the commission, since as an attorney I can't really testify to it myself, although as a resident, longtime resident of Evanston, I'm happy to answer any questions on that basis as well.
Thank you very much. Just give us a moment to determine the next step, since this is an unusual procedure.
Understood.
Okay. Thank you very much.
If you don't need the formal laying of a foundation for the introduction of evidence, you'll just take what we've submitted. This is an administrative body, and you're not bound to, formal rules of procedure. And then we can dispense with that step.
Well, we like to follow the rules here, and so we just need to figure out what that is. All right, thank you very much for your comments. Now, there were a few more people that were listed to speak. Were you all intending to speak as part of the parties in opposition? Yes. Okay. In that case, each of you would have 3 minutes to speak, and so you are welcome to come. I believe that Donna Harrison was first on the list. Would you like to approach? Do you have, is that?
Can I start? Okay. Thanks
Go
very
ahead.
much.
Yeah, go
Again,
ahead.
my name is Donna Harrison, and I live at 1519 Judson. Would there be any possibility that you could pull up that screen that showed the 3 homes together? So it would be the state. Oh yeah, there. Okay. So what I have.
If you could just stay in front of the microphone so that we can get
I
recorded.
could talk really loud. Okay. So what I'm trying to show everyone here is that this was in your packet, and this was in your packet, and this was a picture when the Nancy Brueggemann lived here, and it was in your packet. Okay, so this was our house a number of years ago, and this was the winter. Okay, this was winter, so there is no vegetation. Okay, so fast forward to now, where you do see vegetation.
If you could just get a little closer, we're getting notice here that just to the microphone. Thank you.
So if you notice that this is summer and a little bit farther on, and you'll still notice that my house is here. This is my master or primary resident bath window from my bedroom. Right behind the chimney is my primary bathroom. Okay, so which is that picture, and that picture. So once you build up, even if it's only shorter, 9 feet to 8 feet. If you build up, this will not be my view any longer out of my primary bathroom, the only window in that bathroom. It will be gone. And those trees hang over the garage. They will have to be taken down to be able to put this structure up. There is a fir tree that's in Bob Egley's yard, who is the next door neighbor on Davis. That tree has got to be 80 feet high. All those roots go down under this foundation. If you take this foundation down, you will kill that tree or potentially kill that tree. The other thing is the house that they're talking about here, which they seem to think is this house. So it's
If you could just, I'm so sorry.
I'm the house with the bush. Okay, so there's the Salem's house. That's my house.
Excuse me, he's bringing a portable mic so that you can.
Oh, just, I feel like a rock star, right? Okay, so those pictures there. It is on, Mitchell. Okay, so this is my home. And remember, my house was built in 1938. There was nothing going on. I mean, nobody said you had to build it some way or not way. It probably did not conform to the standards now. So if I had to take if I had to take my house down now, I would have to conform to whatever the standards Evanston wanted to do. This is the Breen's house. It does look like there's a little bit of a difference between here. They have an attached garage with 1 bedroom on the top that comes from their top floor. This is the picture.
If you don't mind finishing up, please. Sorry.
Okay, right, okay. So this is the picture. Their house to my house does not take light away. Even though it looks very close, there is no light. There's trees and grass and blue sky. And this is the facing down that
Thank you.
by my garage.
Thank you.
Do you want this, sir?
So the question is, do we want that? So in the past, people have left them, yeah, that's it.
Okay, and I have pictures, extra pictures too.
Yeah,
Okay, thanks.
thank you. Yeah, okay. Mitchell Harrison. Is Mitchell? I'm sorry? Okay, Mr. Myers, Mike Myers, if you'd like to come.
I live at 1518 Judson, which is directly across the street from the Harrisons. This is a very short, beautiful block. It's 6 homes. It's like half a block. In the last 16 years, we've been through the demolition of the Mather, the construction of the Mather, which went too high. We had the neighbors to our south do a construction project. We have been living for 16 years in a construction zone. There's dust, there's noise, there's traffic. My 2 dogs, I'm afraid, are going to get run over. It's just too much. So that's one point. A lot of noise, a lot of dust, too much on such a small block. It feels too close. And I do worry about the trees. The trees are beautiful, and I do worry that the trees are not going to survive. And as soon as they come down, they're going to be staring at each other's, I don't think either one of them wants to see each other in their restrooms. It just seems too close. I wonder if there's room, and it looks like there is, and they are, I thought they were using an existing foundation. They're going to actually build a new foundation. Couldn't it just move over, to the north and make more room between the 2 homes and, be a little more fair? It just doesn't seem fair. They're trying to keep their patio, but they're coming right up against the Harrison's house. So those are my points. Thanks.
Thank you so much. Okay, Mitchell Harrison is the last person on my list.
Hi there. And I have I'll wait till you're done. 3 minutes? Okay, thanks. I'd like to start out by thanking all of you for having me. My name is Mitchell Harrison. I've lived at 1519 Judson for 40 years, the oldest, tenant, owner on the block. I would first like to say that everything that my lawyer, Jeff Smith, testified to here is completely 100% accurate. I've gone over it with him a couple times. Moving on from there, I just got to say, 2 houses on one property? I mean, come on. What would be the address? 1525 and a half or 1524 and a quarter? From the plans that I've seen, this doesn't fit at all in this neighborhood. This fits in Skokie. Come on, let's be honest. This is a historic lakeshore preservation district. My family moved to Evanston in 1959, and I yearned to go to the lakefront to see big homes, beautiful homes, small homes, beautiful homes. But just forever, and to think that I was able to move in there. By the way, I think my neighbors should maybe drive around the hood a bit, walk around the hood a bit, and see the other homes that are in this neighborhood, in this preservation district. They would see trees and squirrels running up and down there, space and light and air. They wouldn't feel like they're crowded in. I'm very serious. Take a couple walks. I'll finish by saying that I don't think this is right. I think that this appeal is selfish. Sorry. I also think that for Evanston and for this district, it would be a disaster, a real disaster. So I say, in the words of somebody much more famous than me, no, no, no. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. There's no one else on my list. Was there anyone else that hasn't signed up? Okay. Okay, so the next step is for the applicant to come back up and to respond to whatever has been said.
I believe I'm allowed to stand with him and speak as needed.
I just, I wanted to respond to one critical issue that was brought up, and that is we're very aware of the trees. In particular, the majestic tree that's in the yard of 324 Davis, and it's right behind where the ADU is proposed to be, just over the lot line. It's a beautiful tree. I talked to the general contractor about that tree. We talked about various strategies. I've encountered this issue before. There are ways to deal with it. And in particular, in this case, what is very likely to be done is we'll set the structure on piers at the corners and span with either a grade beam or a type of beam to then support the walls above, so that we do the minimal amount of disturbance to the soil or any root system around it. And that's a kind of basic, straightforward technology that's used fairly regularly for precisely these or other similar situations. So I just wanted to say there is a solution there. And I think, and I may be speaking a little bit out of turn, but if it would help to bring in, say, an arborist to advise on this, I think that would be certainly to ease tensions and help preserve this fantastic specimen.
Can I add? I said it at the last meeting. I know some of y'all weren't here, so we're going to do this with dignity. So preserving as many trees as we can. Tony did his homework. Peter, the GC, did his homework. We are going to do this whole project with dignity. I don't want to answer anything my neighbors have said, because like I said last time, I think they're entitled to come and advocate. But I also want to make sure that you all realize we, Tony, Peter, my family, we have addressed everything that was asked of us. I believe the staff review, says that too. And so I just want to make sure that we're focusing on why we're here. And that you please approve this tonight because we've done what you asked. The last thing I'll say is we do have an attorney as well, Netta Nozari, who got sick this afternoon and couldn't make it. Otherwise, she would have been here, but we also we told her to stay home because we didn't feel the need, but we do have an attorney if needed. I don't think it'll get to that. Like I said, we have done everything you all have asked. We haven't, I know there was a question about the zoning. We didn't ask for any variances. When I was the realtor, when we were buying the house, I talked to the city of Evanston zoning. I knew what we were getting into. I understand some of the concerns on that letter, but they're not, we're not doing anything that's not conforming. We're not doing anything that's illegal or against anything else. And so we're going to treat our neighbors and our neighborhood with dignity for this project that shouldn't take more than a year. And we ask that they and you all let us do our project with dignity, please. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay, so that closes that part of the process, and now the commissioners will deliberate. As a reminder, I think we talked last time about review standards number 5, construction, rhythm of spacing and structures on the street, and number 10, scale of a structure. So those are what I understood we were going to be talking about tonight. Does anyone want to go first? Go ahead. Go ahead. I think so. You put your hand up. Go ahead.
So, I think the drawing on the bottom of sheet 16 is very telling. I haven't looked carefully at the zoning that accompanied this project, but I am assuming, as you've suggested, that you meet all the requirements of the zoning ordinance. For the next door neighbors, all I can say is that sadly, the zoning ordinance, not this commission, is really the only protection that you have for light and view, adjacency, and what's built next to your house. And the thing about this project is that while it conforms to the letter of the law, it so blatantly is not in the spirit of the law. And the reason I say that is if you look at the footprint of the part of the house that's labeled 1525 Judson, forget about the bustle sticking out the south side. That footprint is actually smaller than the ADU, and when you look at the street view, the volume of the main house and the volume of the ADU are approximately the same. So while I haven't read the new ADU ordinance, I know that the intention of it is that the ADU is an auxiliary building. So the question is, is an auxiliary building still an auxiliary building when it's as big as the thing that it is auxiliary to? Now, not having read that ordinance, I have no idea whether a version of this could actually be attached to the house. I'm assuming that it would absolutely not work under the zoning. Again, the interesting thing about the drawing the architect has made is that assuming this was a new house, the spacing, the drawing is convincing in terms of the spacing of these things on the street, except because of the weirdness of this site and the fact that the zoning requires equal setbacks from each of the corners, you're in a situation where that spacing is really suggesting that this is a completely independent house rather than an auxiliary structure. So I'm still deciding how I would vote on this given that single issue, but I have a feeling that this is because of the circumstances of the site, that it's a kind of interesting test case for ADUs, particularly if the ordinance is written that they are clearly auxiliary buildings. Thank you.
Okay. Other comments? Go ahead, Carl.
So at other commission meetings, I have brought up the fact that the Lakeshore Historic District is written in the fact that the defining characteristic of that district is that it's for single-family homes. We've had many accessory dwelling unit projects in the district come before us, but they're all on the alley. They're all in the rear of the site. Like Commissioner Cohen said, this is a unique site because it's at the corner. It's a corner lot, and it's a street-facing ADU. And I also am struggling with the fact that the volume of this proposed house, essentially, is a two-bedroom house, is almost equal to the primary residence. And when you look at the drawing, there's a difference between when you look at a drawing, a flat elevation drawing like we're seeing up on the screen, versus being on the street and looking at the site. I don't think that you visually see that solid, what's the standard? 5, I think, is the rhythm of spacing and structures on the street, that you read it the way you read it on the drawing. I think that when you're on the street, the houses do appear closer to each other. Also, I don't read this site just as a Judson site. I read it as a Judson and Davis site because it's at a corner lot. And so because the accessory dwelling unit is going to be visible from both Judson and Davis, so you can see the street-facing main primary elevation on Judson, but you can also see it filling in the void between the two houses on Davis. So, I mean, I understand it's a difficult site because there was a large, the context of the site is that, there was a large 1880s house there that was demolished in the 30s, and then the lot was subdivided and there were these houses built. But I'm kind of struggling with the fact that this is essentially is building a second house on the lot masquerading as a ADU, and so there's kind of this scale issue that
Other comments? Go ahead.
so this is kind of odd, but I live in a coach house. It's not on an alley, and it's in the historic district. No judgments either way, but there are homes that are coach houses. I live in a rather large coach house. It is smaller than the main house, but there's no alley, and so I back up to neighbors. I just wanted everyone to know there are homes like this in the district.
Other comments?
I'm just curious. It seemed like the biggest concern before is the proximity to the neighbors, and there's been an effort to step back from it, but it hasn't been a step back as it could be. And I'm wondering if any of you feel that that's a reasonable thing to ask.
When I walked the site, I was impressed by the how close the buildings are to each other here. And I'm in agreement, I think, with Carl in this sense that when you turn the corner, those buildings are also relevant, and those relationships are also relevant, not just this. But I found it to be perfectly reasonable to have this amount of space between these two buildings. And not two buildings, but these, it's actually more space between the ADU, the proposed ADU, and the neighbor's house than other houses that are there. But I found I am also struggling with the scale of this as it compares to the main house. So the scale of the structure I'm struggling with, but the scale, let me be clear, scale of the structure is construction number 10, but the construction review standard number 10, but the rhythm of spacing and structures on the street, I found this revised to be reasonable. So that is where I hope I responded to your question.
Yeah, I tend to agree with Commissioner Dreller, and it depends on how you look at this thing. If we're looking at it as a new house, which would mean that we're evaluating it under the review standards for construction, and then we ask about the scale of it, it is, absolutely in scale with the existing house to its north, and even the house to the other side. So, while I sympathize with the neighbors, it's sort of like I feel like I'm between a rock and a hard place, because I really feel that, in a sense, in terms of the limitations that we're faced with, which are the criteria for a certificate of appropriateness, that architecturally, it's a pretty decent looking thing, and it seems to meet them. If I were in a position to do so, I would just say, in deference to the neighbors to the south who are sort of getting screwed, would you guys consider moving this house over a couple of feet to the north, so that in fact you're right at the 10-foot requirement for setback between a house and an ADU?
Other comments? Go ahead.
Like other commissioners, I feel very conflicted over this. I don't think there's a very clear balance one way or the other. I'm largely in agreement with the comments that have already been made. It weighs with me the issue of the privacy of the patio versus the privacy of the neighbours. It weighs with me the issue that there is no vegetation in winter. On the other hand, it also weighs with me that, as has been pointed out, you've come back, we asked for changes, and you have, at least in some measure, responded to that. So I'm sorry I can't give a definitive answer, but I feel very, very conflicted over this.
I feel like the next step is really to just take a look at the standards, like, clearly. So shall we just go, this would be page 6 of the packet. They're highlighted in the staff report under Standards for Review of Construction, number 5. Rhythm of spacing and structure on the streets. The relationship of a structure or object to the open space between it and adjoining structures or objects and the setback from the public ways shall be visually compatible with the property, structures, sites, public ways, objects, and places to which it is visually related. As a reminder, and I'm not sure this came up yet, but this is a non-contributing property to the district. So we have kind of a varying levels of expectation in terms of the applicability of the standards. So if it were a individually landmarked home, then we would have to be very stringent with the standards, right? But then if it's a district contributor, then the expectation for applicability of the standards is slightly lower. And for non-contributors, they are treated as contributors here in the city of Evanston, just so that everyone understands. There's no differentiation between contributors and non-contributors. So anyway, that said, rhythm of spacing and structures on the street, I feel that this project meets this particular standard. There's a reasonable amount of space between the proposed new building and the buildings adjacent or visually related to it, at least in comparison to what's on this block as well as the block around the corner that isn't on page 16. So shall we have just a conversation about this particular standard and make sure that we're all in agreement or not, or if we're not in agreement, where we fall?
So are we doing like a straw poll down just to see where
No, just instead of having kind of a broad brush, everybody say what they're thinking, let's just try to stay to this particular standard. I'm sorry?
Ask if anybody disagrees with what you just said.
So he's suggesting that I ask. I mean, we could do that. I was assuming we were going to vote at some point, but we could do a straw poll.
I was just curious what process if you were suggesting we vote by criteria.
Standard. No, I just wanted to try to focus the conversation.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I'll just kick us off then. It sounds like it's kind of clear where people are landing on this, but I do think that drawing tells the story that it's similarly spaced to other buildings, and that's the criteria.
Does anyone disagree with that or want to speak up, have strong feelings about that? Okay. So then we're looking at the next page, number 10, Standard for Review of Construction, number 10, scale of a structure. The size and mass of structures in relation to open spaces, windows, door openings, porches, and balconies shall be visually compatible with the properties, structures, sites, public ways, objects, and places to which they are visually related. So this is the one that I am struggling with because this particular new proposed new building is, at least in terms of the footprint, larger than, or seems to be larger or almost the same size as the building to which it is visually related. It is smaller than in terms of height, and I believe it's smaller than it was the last time around, so they've made that change, so that's commendable. It is also smaller than the other properties around it, considerably so. So if we're looking at scale of a structure, what it says is to which they are visually related. So visually related is almost there for me, but not quite. That the scale of it in footprint feels pretty big, but in elevation, not so much. That there is something about the scale, the relationship of the proportions that isn't quite there. It is smaller in scale than the other three houses that are on this page. but it is not smaller in scale or not considerably smaller in scale than the house to which it is visually related to on its own property.
May I ask a
Yes.
question?
Yeah.
Because I guess I'm trying to understand what we're using scale for. Because obviously there's a scale for the main houses. They all have a datum. They all have a scale to them, and the garages or the additions all have an addition. Have kind of a scale to them as well. So there's large, small, right? But then there's this proposed building that's kind of in between both. It's larger than the accessory or ancillary garages or additions, but then it's smaller than the primary houses. So what is the goal? What is the goal? Are we trying to have it to be in scale with what? With the garages, with the main house, with all of the above?
So I think that's a very fair question. It says, yes, no, that's why we're trying to look at this. And so it says to which they are visually related. The historic resource here is the district, to a certain extent, right? But that's what we're trying to protect here. So there is that. But if we're looking at the items to which it is immediately visually related, there is, okay, I see. I think I'm saying the same thing. Go ahead, Stuart.
If you read 10, it says the scale of the overall structure, but the other things that give it scale are things like the windows, things like the fact that it looks very much like the eave line is aligned with the house to the south. Those are all elements that give scale to this structure. My biggest objection to it are the two front-facing garage doors, and there are North Shore suburbs which in their wisdom have added to their zoning a prohibition against front-facing garages, yet the house two houses to the south, there are front-facing garages, although because they're in an angle, they're partially screened by the by the wall. But that's in terms of scale, that's my biggest problem, is those garage doors. But I also understand, given the site, that there really isn't any other choice.
So, can I just ask a kind of follow-up question? When you're talking about scale with two garage doors, are the two garage doors making it seem, in your view, making it seem larger in scale than it is? Is that the problem that you're describing?
There are openings in the surface that are out of scale.
Come closer to your. Yeah, sure.
Yeah. No, I just, when I look at it, there are openings in the surface that are larger than the other openings. So one of our criteria is both the size and proportion of the windows, which I think are nicely done here, but it's also the idea that there's a ratio of opening to surface, and the minute you've got these huge garage doors, there's no way, I think, to address that.
The thing is that if they were to have one continuous garage door, that would be even, right, so they've broken up the scale in that sense. Yeah.
It's an attempt, sorry, I'm off. Yeah. It's an attempt, I think, on the part of the architect to actually mitigate against the size of those things. I mean, if it was one big, huge garage door, I think we'd all really hate it.
It would certainly
hate it more than we.
Well, hated is a strong word, but feel uncomfortable about the scale more than what they've done. So at least there's this. I'm looking in that direction. Do you guys have more to say about the scale of the structure? Number 10.
And I just wanted to share with the commissioners, for a professional reason, I'm recusing myself from this discussion, and so that's why I'm just being quiet on this one. But if y'all remember what I said last time, that still stands.
Go ahead, Carl. Oh, yeah, I'm sorry. You look like you
I'm just
wanted to talk.
I don't know.
I get you.
Yeah, so, were you going to talk?
Go on, no, go
Oh,
ahead.
no. So scale, so there's this scale of the structure in relationship to trees and the other buildings around it, and then there's the scale of the features in the building, which I think is what Stuart was talking about, and I don't think you could do better in those terms. The way the windows line up with the doors, the scale of the windows fit in with the neighborhood. It sort of looks to me like the servant space over the coach house that was there in the 1880s. It looks like we would see coach houses like this around Evanston. But the odd thing is actually now the house, because it was built in the 1950s. So just to go back to what you said, Chair Dreller, I think that in terms of 10, I don't have any problems with it because the scale of the openings and the scale of the elements of the building fit in with the neighborhood.
So is it just the scale, in terms of scale, are we just struggling over the footprint and the visual relationship of the footprint of this structure to the one that is visually related to on the same property? Is that what I hear some people saying from earlier?
This will be my last comment, I think.
You can have as many comments as you want.
Okay. Well, I don't have, just so we've gone through both. So in summary, I don't have a problem with any of the criteria because I think that they've been addressed.
Okay.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
I mean, I agree. And if the footprint and the volume and the enclosed area of the ADU meet the requirements of the zoning, then I don't know how our criteria would supersede that.
Well, it would have to do with the relationship of this building to the district, in terms of the historic quality of the district, because that's we're representing.
Quality?
We're representing that part here. Now, I've been focused on numbers 5 and 10 because that was the focus from last time. But this is brought back again for old business, so I wanted just to make sure that there wasn't, I don't want anyone to think I'm, pushing everybody towards 5 and 10 and nothing else. You're welcome to say whatever you need to say about this project.
I mean, I agree with Tom. I think those two criteria, in terms of the way they're stated, have been met. And I guess I agree with you. I think they've been met.
All right. Does anyone have anything else to say? Because if not, we have we can entertain a motion. Carl?
Well, I was just, I've been reading the standards for alteration number 4, and changes that have taken place in course of time are evidence of the history and development of a property, structure, or site. And so, I understand that, I think that standard 4, the alteration, the change over time, like I said earlier, you have to understand the context that there was a large house on this and that it was subdivided into smaller lots, and trying to fit essentially 2 houses on one lot. I know I'm in the minority, but I think that trying to fit 2 houses on this small lot is a lot.
I mean, I agree with that. The problem is that while the new construction has the volume of of the adjacent house from the 50s, it's really an ADU. It's an auxiliary building, and that's the dilemma that we're sort of faced with here.
I think that I'm sorry, go ahead.
I mean, if there's more discussion, great. If not, I'd be happy to make a motion.
Carl, did you have anything more you wanted to say? Okay. You want to make a motion? Go ahead.
Yeah, as I said before, I think this is problematical in that it exceeds what anyone ever anticipated looking at as an auxiliary building. But I move that we grant a certificate of appropriateness to 24 Pres 0046, 125 Judson Avenue, Lakeshore Historic District. And I move that reluctantly. Anthony Hertig, architect and applicant on behalf of the homeowner, requests a certificate of appropriateness to demolish an existing detached two-car garage and construct a new detached two-story accessory dwelling building with ground floor parking in the rear yard. Applicable standards for demolition 1 through 5, construction 1 through 14 and 16. And I would like to add to that in deference to the neighbors to the south, that the ADU be moved to 10 feet from the existing residential structure, which is the minimum required by law.
Okay, so if you would like to, hold on a second.
Can we just second the motion so we can discuss it and then vote? Or
So someone should second the motion, and then if you'd like to discuss the condition that was added and whether that's appropriate or not, you can debate that.
That's what I was going to ask.
I'll
So-
second the motion.
Go, okay, so the motion has been seconded. Okay, did you want to comment? Go ahead.
Well, no, I was just trying to, so that we're not having these side comments, I just wanted to have it so that we could have a discussion of the motion before, because I know that we're asking, Commissioner Cohen has asked for, 10 feet now, right, instead of the proposed. So I just wanted to have an opportunity so people could discuss
Yeah.
that before we vote.
Right. So that's what I was asking about the process. That's what I was asking him about. So it has been seconded, so before we vote, we can talk about that part of it. Did anyone have any comments about that?
Lisa, I'm curious. You haven't said a lot about this. I'm curious what you think. Does just to put you on the spot, does it make it, and Stuart, does it make it too close to the existing building? I mean, my thought was, and because I said it earlier, is that just to, give the neighbors maximum deference, and that they, what do we think?
Tom, I think the reality is a couple of feet won't count for very much, but I think since the principal objection to the new construction, in addition to the fact that nobody wants to live next to a construction site, is frankly that the neighbors feel that the ADU is too close and that it's the view out their window, which in fact it is. And I was just suggesting that a little bit more space could be put between the two structures.
My thought is that, I was just looking it up, I think both, if it is a rear yard, but if it was a side yard, it would be 5 feet. The setback would be 5 feet. The neighboring house would be 5 feet as well, which gives you 10 feet between houses in this district, if I'm correct. So my thought is if they move it, I don't have 9 inches over, so it's 5 feet off that property line. They're giving the neighbors, 15 feet between houses, 16 feet between houses, which is generous, I think.
I would like to make sure that we stick to the standards for review. So,
Okay.
Stuart.
Suggestion 17.
So, Stuart, in terms of, I just wanted to make sure that we are clear about the standards. So, your addition to, or your amendment to this COA application, to move it, how is that related to the standards for review?
It's not.
It's not.
Okay.
It's not. So I don't know what the procedure here is. I know in the past we have added provisions and amendments to the approval, and what we're voting on is that it meets all the standards, but we're actually asking for
More.
basically. And in this case, it would be a reduction of almost 2 feet between the existing house and the ADU, which would, can I do the math, 16.9, it would make it 17.9 between the neighbor and the new ADU.
I agree.
And whether it's compatible or not, you know, if they want to come
All right, so if the project as proposed meets the standards, then it meets the standards.
Right.
But what we could do is suggest, rather than require, we could suggest that the applicant consider moving it a little bit over, and also give staff the permission to approve that as a minor work if that's necessary. Go ahead.
I'm old. My memory is probably not as good as it used to be, but I remember in past years that we could make the granting of approval of a certificate of appropriateness dependent on conditions that we added. And
We can.
I don't know what that process is administratively, but I think we can do that so that it's a requirement for the COA, not a suggestion.
We absolutely can do it as a requirement, but if they don't need to do that to meet the standards, then we have no reason.
Chair Dreller, I think what Stuart's saying is there's meeting the standards in the context of everything that's been presented. And that's what we're doing.
I'm sorry, I don't understand. Oh, if the proposed project meets the standards as it is, then it meets the standards. That's our job, right? But we could say that if they wanted to move it, then we give them permission to do that. And they don't have to come back to us and ask.
Yeah, I'm just going to go back to what Stuart said. So we can approve with conditions. And I think we're maybe splitting a hair here because I think a lot of us feel like it probably meets it. I'll just say probably meets it. But based on what we've heard and being sensitive to not only the preservation standards, but the community, and I feel like we could say that maximizing the space while maintaining the criteria should be what we recommend.
We can absolutely do that.
And that's why I seconded it.
If the project as proposed meets the standards, then it meets the standards.
So what, Chair Dreller, I'm kind of confused by what are you saying that you would not support this?
I think it would be great if they move it, but I'm not sure if we're clear that it's meeting the standards as proposed. I'm not sure what basis we have to require it.
So
what we could do is give them permission to move it and then not oblige them to come back if they want to move it.
Can we, because we were discussing standards 5 and 10, that's the reason for the continuation.
Right.
And so what my understanding is from what we're all talking about is kind of based in standard 5 of rhythm of spacing and so I guess hearing all the testimony from everyone, the applicant and the neighbors and our discussion tonight, it seems as though that's based in standard 5. That's my interpretation. I don't know what everyone else thinks.
I think that's what we're talking about now is standard 5. But if we believe that this project meets the standards as proposed, then we're then requiring them to change it.
Well, I guess what I would say is that then I would just say it doesn't meet it because it can be better. And what we should advocate for is the best solution. And that would involve giving as much deference to the space, to the building to the south. And the way to do that would be to minimize the space to the north. And that's why I think it will meet the standards if we do that. That's what I would say.
Okay. Well, I was responding to the comment that was made that it met the standards.
Understood.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So is there any other commentary about this particular requiring them to move it? Okay. All right. I think we should do a roll call vote.
Commissioner Allman?
So just to be clear, we're voting on what Stewart, right, yes, aye.
Commissioner Klein?
No.
Chair Jeller?
No?
Commissioner Bodan?
I'm recusing.
And
Aye.
hold on, pause.
Right, just to be clear, we're voting on the entire thing, not just the condition that Stewart, okay.
Commissioner Bodan, you were abstained?
Abstain, yes.
Commissioner Cohen?
I thought I voted aye.
Commissioner Rosalo?
Aye.
Commissioner Johnson?
Aye.
4 voting in favor, 2 voting against, and 1 abstaining. The motion passes.
Okay, thank you very much.
I can step out after.
Okay. Moving on to new business. Could staff please read the next item into the record?
Case number 24, PRS 0067, 2300 Lincolnwood Drive, a landmark. Omar Gutierrez, architect and applicant, on behalf of the homeowner, submit for a certificate of appropriateness to alter the home's west elevation roof plane by introducing 4 skylights and constructing 3 gable dormers above the home's full second story. Applicable standards, alteration 1 through 10, and construction 1 through 4, 6 through 8, and 10 through 14. And I believe we have the homeowners presenting. And give me a second to pull up the presentation.
Yeah.
Kate, will you be able to step up?
Should we take a break so that you can talk?
They have a separate presentation that they can go through on their own. Probably won't take long.
May I make a motion to reorder the agenda so that Chair Dreller could give her presentation on the art commission, so that staff could go talk to the applicant?
I'd like to just advocate for the homeowners who are going to be staying up past their bedtime. Those folks have their day in court. These folks are waiting. I think out of respect to them, we should move along.
Okay.
All right.
Yeah, I haven't read that or
It's a mess in Oak Park.
Sorry, it's being quite slow.
You can come up
You
if
can stand
like.
next to them. I'm gonna jump down and grab them the little remote, and they can walk through this while I speak to
I
them.
think the dormers are just fine.
They're on their back of the house.
Are we okay to start?
Kate, the only thing is that you need to tell me how to move the.
Oh, they can.
Oh, you can do it. Okay, I see.
So which one? Forward and back, forward and back. Yeah. Gotcha. Okay.
Technology. Okay.
Hello.
Could you please, go ahead and say your name. Go ahead.
Bob and Kathy Benson, we're the homeowners. Unfortunately, Omar Gutierrez, who's our architect, is out of town. He had a long planned Disney family vacation, so he's watching the live stream. If we have questions we can't answer, we were able to text with him, but bear with us. We're going to take you through his presentation as best we can. So our project is an attic renovation with 3 additional dormers and 4 skylights being added. This is the site plan, which shows the addition of the 3 dormers, and which are most visible from the south side. It's a corner lot, which is Grant Street. This shows the existing second floor. So part of the project is to renovate the second floor bathrooms and to create a a new stairwell that meets code. Right now, there's a very narrow stairwell going up to the attic. This is the existing unfinished attic, and you can see it's a very narrow stairwell there. This shows the new stairwell being built on the second floor. This is the proposed finished attic space, so it's creating a home office, a bathroom, and a loft area on the other side. You can see the 3 dormers. The 2 outer dormers are centered over the second floor windows, with the middle dormer centered between the 2 outer dormers. And then on the other side, the skylights are centered over the existing. I'm sorry. Oh, sorry. Is that better? I hope.
Do you need him to be closer?
I think I'm closer now, so hopefully that's better.
Do you think that's better now? Yeah, okay, thank you.
Thank you. So to repeat what I was saying, the dormers, the outer dormers will be centered over the second floor windows, with the middle dormer being centered between those 2, and then the skylights would be centered over the existing dormer on the other side of the home. This is showing the roof plan with the dormers and skylight, create a rhythm on the rear facade, and are centered over the existing elements of the home. This is the view from the back of the home, the dormers and the skylights, again, with creating the rhythm over the rear facade, centered over the existing elements below. The siding on the dormers is the plan is to match siding on the existing eaves. The existing dormer, which is on the second floor, is finished with asphalt, but it's likely not the original finish material. And then the gable dormers are reducing the overall scale of the size of the dormers. This is an alternative view where Omar has shown the shed roof on the dormers instead of the gables. Our preference is the gables because we think I think this option, the dormers are a little larger in scale, and so this reduces the scale of the dormers. This is the south-facing view with the gable dormers, and highlighting the existing eaves with the siding that we intend to match to. Did that move? There we go. Again, the alternative from the same view with the shed dormers, and again, same comment that they're it gives a larger scale under that option, so that's not our preferred approach. From the north view, with the gable dormers following the typical condition of the sides in front of the home. Again, the alternative side with the shed dormers. And then just kind of highlighting some of the things we were taking into account, minimal alterations to the house itself while adding the square footage that we're looking for. We're not removing any of this distinguishing original qualities. The proposed dormers will match the architectural features, not increase the height of the home. And the location of the proposed dormers and skylights relate to the existing features and create a rhythm of the rear facade. Size of the proposed windows matches the existing ones, and the matching of the materials are matching the existing materials on the building. Proposed gable roof shapes are compatible with the predominant features of the home, and the scale of the proposed structure is visibly compatible with the existing home, and keeping the distinguishing qualities of the home. And then the rest is just kind of the different views of the 3D views of the home with the proposed dormers. And I think that is it. So happy to attempt to answer any questions.
Does anyone have any questions for the applicant?
I do.
Go ahead.
So this might be one for Omar if you're playing along at home. I'm looking at page 43 of the packet, the proposed attic floor plan. And the convention for an architectural floor plan is to cut the plan at about 3.5 feet above the floor. And that's why we can see the dormers cut through in section. They're dark, the walls are dark. It might be that this plan is, what I'm having a hard time understanding is why don't we see the stair on the front of the house? The way that this is drawn, and I think it might just be a graphics thing because I think maybe we're cutting through. Can Lisa or Stuart chime in? Yeah, right. So, and it might just be a graphics thing that I think they're actually cutting through the roof further. Is north up in this? I don't see a north arrow.
North is to the right.
Okay, so we're looking at the east side. So
I'm confused. Is that stair new?
Yes.
yeah, it's new, but I'm trying to understand just the three-dimensionality of this, like why we don't see that on the front, because it looks like it would be protruding.
Yeah. Is that shown?
Because it's actually more center of the house, because the stairwell coming up to the second floor is actually in front of it. So it's, and maybe maybe a better one would be look at the front of the home. You can kind of see it's got the really steep, sorry, I don't have the terminology, but.
So it's over the front door, right?
So the stair, like when you're coming up the stairs, the windows that are facing east. So the entryway to the attic now, as it will still be, is like you come up the stairs and then you turn left, and there's a small door now that you enter, but it's going to be open. So you're going to enter the stairs, and then there's going to be a turn.
So on.
Oh, here we go. Omar responded.
On
that
page 42, I think, so what we're looking at is on the front facade, when you see the window, that's on a landing at the turn of the stairs, right?
And I can read you Omar's response via text. The area of the stair near the front is under the existing roof. There will be no changes to the front of the home. The plate height on the front of the home is higher than the back of the home.
Right.
This is visible on the side elevations.
A tricky one.
What page is that you're on?
I think page 50.
While you have Omar on the phone,
so.
I have a really
49 and 50.
stupid question for him.
Sure.
By including option B, which is more massive and nowhere near, in my opinion, as nice as the gable-ended dormers, did he really want us to vote?
No.
I think he was trying to show that we've considered other alternatives, and this was what we felt was the best approach.
So just to be clear, option A is the proposed option.
Yes.
Sorry for the
I have another question.
Yeah.
What is it? 4 skylights that are to the right of the dormers, are those going to be like flush with the roof, or will there be some kind of like flashing or something, like protruding out a little? I don't know.
So Omar just texted, notice the chimney is not centered on the gable, but hopefully he heard your last question.
Are they skylights or roof windows? Because the roof windows are flat, whereas the skylights have a different kind of curb condition.
We've referred to them as skylights. I don't know.
We'd much prefer roof windows, I think.
Right, because I'm just trying to understand if it's just like, when you look at it, I'm just trying to understand, it's the roof window would be like flat with the plane of the roof, and a skylight, they would be like standing out, you would be able to see it.
So Omar's a little delayed. He's still on. He said, no, we're just showing that we considered other options for the option B. So
you had said there was a delay in the.
There might be a delay in the feed.
So, and then he just said yes. So I don't know.
In the side elevation,
deck
it shows up as
mounted
if it's a roof
protrude a
window.
little, he said.
Yes.
No, they're skylights. They're going to protrude a little.
That's what he's saying, yes.
So they're labeled as skylights, and that's what they actually are.
deck-mounted skylights operable?
Roof windows.
What's that?
The difference is how they're flashed. The typical skylight sits on a 3.5-inch curb plus the frame of the skylight, whereas the frame of the roof window actually sits, an 1.5 inches or 2 inches above the adjacent roofing. I'm sure you're showing a roof window, so it's moot.
Well, if it's labeled skylight and he's saying that it's
Yeah, I mean, to be
protruding-
clear, he said deck-mounted skylights operable, so for what
Okay.
that's worth.
So I think that's what we need to vote on, if that's what the architect is saying, and that's what it says in the...
And he just responded again, yes, skylights.
So is the stair down in the proposed plan starting, like the first step down from the attic is in the same place it is now?
Yes. It's now just being widened.
Much wider, there's not going to be a door anymore. It's going to match the hardwood, like we want it to kind of blend as much as possible.
Right. I guess where I'm going with this is like old attic stairs are generally really steep, so you can get down quickly.
Right.
This is all to code, yeah. There's like,
If it's starting at the same point, you're not going to get down as fast.
The primary bedroom, so it's kind of eating into that closet. What we can see here is the stairwell, proposed stairwell, because it's bigger, like you said, it's going to kind of eat into the space of the closet that's currently in the primary bedroom, or one of the closets. There's multiple closets.
Yeah, I would say in the interest of time, since it's not visible from the outside.
Yeah. No,
why
that's
are
what
we talking about it?
No, only because I thought maybe it should be visible from the outside if it was actually drawn correctly. No
Right,
offense, Omar.
the way it's drawn, it makes it feel as though there ought to be something on the elevation, and there isn't. So that's our job is to look at what's on the outside, so that's why we're asking about that. We don't usually talk about the configuration of the inside so much. Did you have something else you wanted to ask? I thought I cut you off. Other questions for the applicant? Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
I don't know if you, okay. Omar just texted one more thing. I don't know if you, he just said there is quite a lot of headroom at the beginning of the stair.
Okay, thanks.
Sure.
All right, is there anyone from the public here to speak on this? Did we get anything in writing? Okay. So moving on to deliberation now. Did anyone want to have anything to say?
The only question I had for you guys was the existing dormers on the house are kind of shingled over, which if it were a slate roof, slate dormers, but it looks like we're looking at siding and corner boards. Does anybody have any feelings about that?
So you mean shingled on the sides as well?
Yeah, I mean, and right up
Yeah.
to the window casing, it looks like.
So, what is this? Page 45 of the packet, there's an existing dormer
Yeah.
that has the, like you described, and then there's the proposed condition of the siding, right? And so you're saying...
I'm just wondering, like, it doesn't quite fit in. I'm not a huge fan of asphalt shingles on the side of dormers, but it...
So to match or fit in the context of the other dormer?
Yeah, I'm just bringing that up.
Would be better to, or...
I'm on the fence right now. I'm just kind of raising that as something that we should consider in terms of how it fits in with the rest of the house.
I agree with that. I think this is a roof element, and the roof is really important to this house, like especially important to the architectural qualities of this house. So if it were made to kind of flow with the roof a little bit more, I think it would be more compatible than it is now. Yeah, I want to let others talk. Go ahead.
I agree. I kind of agree too that the three new dormers would then fit more seamlessly with. They would visually, meld in or just blend in with the roof. As you said, the roof is a very important characteristic of the house. So
That was one of my concerns too, is that long sloping roof is such a distinguishing original quality. And I was just having trouble getting the introduction of the new gables and how it just punctuates that whole plane. And so that was just one of my concerns about how it would be meeting alteration standard number 2 in particular. And then also number 5, again, another distinctive stylistic feature. I'm considering that long plane of the roof as a stylistic feature, and just making sure that that's not impeded by these new gables. I don't know if option B is the right way either, to be honest, but I'm just trying to reconcile.
So the thing about option B is that it does sort of attempt a different way of allowing that sort of flow of the roof to occur, because it's not. One of the things that I'm struggling with is the proportion of these dormers. The other dormers in the house are kind of more horizontal, and whereas these are more vertical. And the house itself is vertical, but somehow the verticality in these is competing with the roof.
Yeah, I understand what you're saying, that the overall, the roof is, the directionality is vertical, but everything that's protruding, the windows are more horizontal.
Yeah,
and that leads to the emphasis of the stylistic roof, right? So
yeah, it's kind of the dormers are sort of subservient in a sense in terms of the horizontal and verticality. Directional. All right, thank you. So we do have a standard for that. Review of construction standard for review of construction number 11, directional expression of facades. A structure shall be visually compatible with the property, structures, sites, public ways, objects, and places to which it is visually related in its directional character, whether this be vertical character, horizontal character, or non-directional. So this house definitely is directional. Like, that's actually part of its character. And to have... And I think one of the ways that happens is that the dormers are, the existing dormers are going in the other direction, kind of like melding in with the roof. Yeah, go ahead.
There really is only one dormer, which is the one on the back, which has a double window, which I don't think I would characterize as horizontal. The things on the front are really almost like eyebrow windows as opposed to dormers. So the issue is that the 3 dormers on the back are introducing what is essentially a new architectural element to this house, although one certainly not incompatible with the style of the house.
So I don't know. I was looking at that little one on the back as being a dormer. I'm not sure what you mean by the fact that since it has a double window, it's not a dormer.
No, I think you said it's a dormer, but it's not horizontal.
I think that what Commissioner Cohen was saying was that because it's a double window, they're vertical in proportion. But I think that he's looking at the window opening, and you're looking at kind of the massing of the whatever we're calling this, a dormer, double window, or
yeah.
Yeah, I agree with Stuart. I think that there's not a dormer like that on the house, but that doesn't mean it doesn't fit. I mean, I think that the dormers themselves are narrow and pointy, kind of like the house. So I think I'm fine with. I think the architect's done a good job of kind of like making a dormer shape that fits the vertical orientation of the house, that directionality.
So you don't think that competes with the roof?
No, I think having a dormer and a super steep roof like this, we would expect to see that. So then the question is, what's the shape of that? And they did 3 rather than going for broke and trying to max out space and doing a big shed dormer, which would compete with the one below. So I think it's sensitive.
I was going to say, I think the shed dormer would be out of scale and heavy looking. And the only place you could go would be to say, well, the only gable end is the sort of steep Gothic one on the front of the house, and I'm sure that if you were to look at that as a gable end on a individual dormer, that you'd hate it proportionally.
What about the pitch of those gables? That doesn't seem out of non-compatible with everything else. There's the other gable, the other dormer, and also this small element there in the bottom left. Those have a different pitch.
I mean, the only thing I can think of is that they're maximizing head height in those areas.
No, I understand. But I mean, in terms of compatibility.
I have a comment. This is a building with variable pitch across the piece.
Yeah.
It's got a cat slide roof, or sort of cat slide roof, with two different pitches. It's got a different pitch on the gable on the front to the back. If anything, the fact that the gables are of different pitch actually fits in with the composition of the house, rather than to insist on uniform pitches on the gables would not be consistent with the rest of the house, which is all higgledy-piggledy.
Well, it's certainly eclectic.
I think I want this on the record. I think there's a certain Hogwarts character to the dormers that's appropriate.
Well, I am bringing my
I didn't
bias
hear.
to this.
Could you repeat that again?
This is a Tudor revival house, and I'm bringing my experience of Tudor houses to it,
Yeah.
which is absolutely classic in that sense.
Well, there is a playful
Right.
aspect to everything about the house, and so I don't. I mean, we're splitting hairs here over the roof, the slope of the roof, maybe, because it is on a rear facade. But I understand
very,
what you're saying about the shape of the roof.
It's just to be clear, it is quite visible from the street because, again, we have another corner lot, so we can see it, and it's really that sort of, what did you call it, cat slide? I like that. The cat slide quality of it, I was thinking sort of slalom, sort of is broken up here with these gables. But I also don't disagree that it's very eclectic. It's got a lot going on, and so adding some more isn't necessarily out of incompatible. Also, yeah. I also, from the view from the street. I mean, these are all elevations, right? The view from the street, you can definitely see that sort of cat slide shape. This is not going to, these are visible, but it isn't going to impede on that character defining quality of the shape of the roof. It's not altering that part. I'm letting people process for a second. Are there any other comments? Did you have something else you wanted to say?
I guess just the only thing is just to remind everyone that it is a landmark property too.
Yes, so the standards for review are pretty considerable, more than other projects that we might have seen tonight. Well, if there's no more, okay, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Am I allowed to ask, I'm new on the board, am I allowed to ask if you've considered something else?
Yeah.
Where the skylights are, did you consider putting a dormer there?
Do you want me to?
Come,
The way Omar explained it is.
if you wouldn't mind, come
Yeah,
close
come
to
to the
the microphone, thank you.
Two more dormers.
It didn't make sense, in Omar's mind at least, to have a dormer on top of a dormer, because there's a second floor dormer right there. Does that answer your question?
Yes, it does.
Okay.
Thanks.
And for what it's worth, the original design was going straight up from and then we went back and forth and got feedback and made it much, much smaller. So, and Omar does, I'm not an architect obviously, but he talks about like things talking to him and like the windows being in line with windows. And so he was very intentional with where he placed windows and trying to, again, I know you all understand this more than I do, but the house talking to him and helping him figure out where to put things, he talks that way. So if that helps.
Yeah. So, I mean, is the issue that skylights are incompatible with a Tudor house of this vintage? I mean, I think it'd be funny to run a row of dormers all the way across the house, but compositionally you could take the lower dormer, the center line of that, and put two dormers symmetrical on either side of it, or a single dormer over it. Having said that, I have no objection to what you've shown here.
I mean, I think well, he was talking about adding additional, I think the idea was to keep the nice sloping roof with the dormers and not interrupt that. So I think it was never on the table. That's.
Yeah, I do think.
I don't know, somebody here suggested that, so.
Oh, okay.
We should play it out as a
Sure, yeah.
So I'm just trying to understand, like, when you're talking about the slope of the roof of these dormers, or the gable of these dormers, are you talking about it from the rear elevation or from the side elevation, looking at it?
I was talking
straight
about
on?
page 45 in the packet, the west elevation.
Okay.
I just was wanting to make sure we were in agreement that was compatible, the pitch of those dormers.
And Omar did text, he didn't consider that it would be a bit top heavy to have a dormer over a dormer. We didn't want to impede with the long sweeping roof.
Mm-hmm. I think that if there were a dormer there, you would definitely see it more. And that's one of the main character defining features of the house. Okay. If there aren't any more questions for the applicant, you guys can sit down. And then if there aren't any more comments, we can entertain a motion.
I'll make a motion to approve 24 Pres 0067 at 2300 Lincolnwood Drive. Oh, yeah. Applicable standards, alteration 1 through 10, construction 1 through 4, 6 through 8, and 10 through 14.
I'll second that.
Okay, it's been a second. All in favor? Aye.
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 All opposed? Abstain? Okay, motion carries. Thank you. It is exactly 9 o'clock, so, and as is our custom, we're going to take a 5-minute break and we'll be back at 9:05. All right, we're a little delayed from our break, so we should move on to the next item. Could staff please read the next item into the record?
Case number 24 PRES 0068, 724 Colfax Street in the Northeast Historic District. Todd Israel, architect and applicant, on behalf of the homeowner, submits for a certificate of appropriateness to demolish a wood deck and stair and construct a single-story addition and new deck at the home's rear volume. Applicable standards: demolition 1 through 5, alteration 1 through 10, and construction 1 through 8 and 10 through 15. When you're ready.
Okay, yeah, thank you.
Good evening. My name is Todd Israel, and I'm the architect for proposed one-story rear addition and deck to an existing 1907 prairie or arts and crafts sort of style single-family residence owned by my clients Mark and Meg Faga. You can see the addition in yellow on the site plan. While it's slightly wider than and extends past the existing main body of the house on the west side, it does not encroach upon the neighboring property any more than an existing bay window kind of on the north side of the west wall. And it's essential to the floor plan program in order to accommodate mudroom and an existing stair to the basement. The rest of the addition allows for kitchen and dining room expansion. Another important request from my clients was a window seat extending south from the rectangular bay on the east side of the house, preserving views to a special cherry tree. As noted in your initial review, the roof lines for the square bay and east side of the addition overlap. So the roof on the east side of the addition is a shed roof, which is above the bay roof, and on the west end is a hip. You had asked for a roof plan, so I think that might be one of the slides. Yeah, so on the right side, on the east side of the addition, that's a shed roof, and on the left side, it's a hip to kind of cover that bump out to the west.
So just for the record, that was page 80 in the packet.
I'd also like to note that while I do believe this project complies with the binding review standards, the addition would be barely visible from any point along the street, sidewalk, or alley, especially in the summer with an abundance of foliage. But even in winter, as some of my photographs and the 3D model indicate, from the alley, which is such a small alley that trucks can't even drive down it, the view is blocked by a 6-foot-tall fence, and I was only able to photograph the rear yard and the neighbors' yards by holding a camera high above my head. They are difficult to see in the rear yard context photos. I think if you scroll through a couple, yeah, those. So the photograph on the left is the neighbor to the west, and the photograph on the right is the neighbor to the east. You can barely make them out. In the middle one is our house. You can barely see it, but they both have one-story additions that are kind of in line and in line with the character of the houses and context of the block. The review standards that I feel are most significant relate to the shape, scale, and massing of the addition. Since the low, wide wall mimics the shape of the first floor below a line of trim detail that wraps around the house. We are proposing the same stucco, aluminum-clad windows, wood fascia, and asphalt shingles used on the existing house. I also feel that the addition provides for a bit of innovation, incorporating a modern glass kitchen window, kind of a squared off window above the sink, patio doors, and a modern deck with benches for lounging. The addition also adds some three-dimensionality to the backside of the house.
All right, thank you very much. Are there questions for the applicant?
Oh, good, no, go ahead.
So there's not a floor plan, which isn't necessarily a problem, but I'm trying to understand the bay window that's kind of tucked under the eave.
Yep.
Did you say that's the kitchen?
It's off of the dining room. That's kind of the dining room end of the kitchen. Yeah. Yep. The one that's on the back of the house facing south, that's above the kitchen sink. Yeah.
Okay. Got it. Thanks.
And I was unclear. I think in the past I had done floor plans for this meeting, but then it was some kind of privacy issue.
It's not required.
Not required.
It's not
Okay.
required. I mean, sometimes it helps us to understand what we're looking at on the outside, but it is our jurisdiction only what is visible from the public right away.
Okay.
Also, I think it's important to note, this may be our first application with the new application with the application, sorry, but it's.
The COA form.
Yes. So I have a question. You said there was, a stair going down to the basement, and that's why there's that hipped roof on the one end.
Yeah, we extended it over because there's kind of a limited amount of space there, and we had to account for headroom going down into the basement. So we kind of made it. This is another, that spot right there to the left side. Yeah, and this is where I guess a floor plan would have been helpful, but I didn't know if you didn't want floor plans because I think I thought somebody had mentioned something about an issue of privacy or something, and that was the reason that you weren't requesting them. But I don't know.
So just a question about materials. So I'm looking at page, I think it's clipped, but it looks like it's page 81. There's the back photograph. Yeah, there we go. And the 3D model.
Yeah.
I didn't see it on the exterior elevations, but in terms of the materials, can I assume that I remember you said the addition is stucco.
Yeah.
The stair.
It would be wood.
It'd be framed.
Yeah, framed
okay.
wood,
Because it
yeah.
looks kind of like could be concrete or something.
Yeah, no, it would be like a decking material of wood. Yeah.
Thanks.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
And would that be the same for the railing? Or would it be metal or?
Well, I mean, I would like to make it as kind of minimal as possible. I was trying to indicate like a steel railing.
Okay.
Just so it could be smaller than a wood rail.
Okay, right.
Other questions for the applicant? Okay, thank you.
Okay.
Is there anyone from the public here to speak on this? Did we get anything in writing? Okay. In that case, we're going to move on to deliberation. Anyone want to start off? Go ahead, Stuart.
Yes. Just to maintain my reputation for saying wildly inappropriate things, I think
Hold on a second.
I
now.
think there are two things. One,
Try to make it appropriate,
you
please.
would have no. I mean, just not in that sense. Hopefully, the comments will be appropriate to what we're discussing.
Okay. All right.
Did it occur to you that you could have had Kate come out and look and argued that you can't see this from a public way, so we shouldn't have to present it to us at all? Having said that, I find your interpretation of the criteria for the certificate of appropriateness a really interesting interpretation, because rather than the starting point being this really nice, very simple 4-square house with vertically proportioned double-hung windows, that in fact you've met all the criteria for making your addition look like what it looks like, a kind of bad shed-roofed addition done to the side of the house. That was the inappropriate part.
Okay. Does anyone want to follow that?
No. Well, I'm just trying to understand. Is it because of the two different slopes of the roof, that one end is a hip roof and one is a shed roof, and that they kind of? I mean, I understand it's on the rear.
Yeah, I mean,
so
the windows, the proportion of the windows, the size of the windows relate to that little shed addition off the side, but visually have nothing to do with the primary house. So the question is, I guess, philosophically, should they? And if they don't, then what are our criteria actually referencing?
So the existing bay that they're proposing to extend with the window seat has a shed roof on it, right? And so, I mean, they're just...
I mean, the only shed roof is that little piece coming off the side. And I can't imagine that was original to the house.
No, that's an alteration that was done, and then they're doing their own.
And now they're
so
making
matching
their addition
it.
look like the alteration, yeah. So what do the criteria apply to?
Well, I think there is a standard for that over time, additions to houses over time can get significance, and so I guess that was what, number 4, standards for alteration.
Even if, one of the really interesting things is that how we look at architecture and the criteria that we bring to bear on judging it seems to change over time. And, the question is, for me at least, is, what do we think about that little shed-roofed addition, and do we think it's a kind of horrible thing to do to a nice old simple 4-square house, even though it's been there for a while?
I understand where you're, I would say that this is just a communication between two people right now, but I understand where you're going, and I think that the rear addition is taking that into context, that there is already an existing addition to the house, and it's just continuing that, wrapping it around to the rear addition. It does get a little awkward at the other end when it becomes a hipped roof.
Kind of awkward, but who am I to say?
I agree. It's awkward.
If you want to, it's okay.
I agree that these roof lines are tricky, and this is a difficult. There's There's no way to add, we weren't going to do a flat roof. That would have been completely inappropriate. The hip roof on the hip roof on the east side doesn't work because of how it would interact with the existing sloped roof on that square bay. I tried it and it just didn't work. It just, the heights of it, everything was not, it just doesn't work. I would have preferred that, yeah.
Yeah. Could you, could you explain that with an image, please?
Yeah.
I think page
This one
I'm
right
on
here.
81.
81, yeah.
Is 81 good for everybody?
I think that's a problem you've created because you've done an addition to one side of that funny little shed roof bay so that the shed roof actually projects beyond the corner. If that wasn't there, then you could, in fact, easily put a hip roof on.
It still doesn't work three-dimensionally, even without that extension, because they're at different, it's at different heights.
Let me change from roofs to windows. So in that same page 81, it seems to me that the windows on, I guess it's the east elevation, are kind of crowding the bay a little bit. Because I mean the character of the house is that there are these double hung windows with a fair bit of wall around them, and so bringing the window. I mean, that's why the plan, I can kind of understand there's probably something going on in there where you want as much light as possible, but I'm just wondering if it feels like that the proportion of the solid around that window isn't like, it doesn't kind of, it's different from the rest of the house, and that's the technical reason to say it just kind of, yeah.
But does this, I mean, I agree, and I've been trying to kind of make this look as good as we can, but is that something that you can even see from, like you were saying, can you see that from anywhere in the public way?
What is that little addition that cantilevers out and screws up the corner where your roofs?
That's a window seat that my clients requested.
So I think to answer your question, I think alleys are public rights of way, and we do not take into consideration, even though it is existing, your fence or trees or any vegetation. I mean, it kind of, over time, those things can change, and so we're kind of, like X-ray vision looking through it to see the rear addition. So I think that's why it's coming before us, because it's from a public right of way, and Commissioner Cohen said so. That's to answer your question. Yeah.
Okay.
We don't have a plan, but could the window seat go on the other side of that shed bay, of that thing?
Well, the reason my clients requested it is they have there's a cherry tree that's indicated on the site plan that they wanted to have a window seat to be able to sit there and see their cherry tree.
We're talking here about the 3 small windows that are all in a row.
Could it become one?
Right, Thomas?
Yes, right.
That's what you're talking about, the 3 small windows all in a row on the proposed.
And
you're feeling like the 3 small windows are crowded.
So I think what he was, don't correct me if you want to say it?
Well, I was just saying that the character of the house is that the windows generally have a lot of wall around them, and the challenge is like making an addition that's bright and has a lot of light. You do have it looks like the sliding glass door next to it, so there's a lot of light there, and I'm wondering if you could kind of let the window have a little bit more wall around it, like the rest of the house does.
Yeah, I mean, I was trying to those are exactly the same size windows as the 3 square windows on the angled bay toward the front of the house on that first floor. So I was copying that sort of design language. But yeah, if we needed to reduce that, we could, but that was kind of the language I was working with.
So to be clear, on page 79, the existing elevation on the east side has 3 windows.
3 windows. Those are the same size windows.
Upper left.
If you move the cursor a little bit to the right, those 3 windows, those are the same.
So when you see it in elevation as opposed to the model, it makes sense.
Right, in elevation it makes sense, but I think it's when you're looking at it at the perspective of that, the two walls coming together. They're the 3 small windows that match the existing, but then there's the window seat windows that are right up against each other.
True.
It loses its context, in other words. We understand what your inspiration, but it's, right, that's what you're trying to say.
Kate, was this contributing? Or
It is a contributing structure.
So
I just have one more question about your selection of the roof composition. You with the roof that you have, then you do lose the horizontal banding around at the midpoint of the wall there. What was your thought about a flat roof? Would that have worked at all?
I mean, I drew it and it looked completely inappropriate. I mean, it just lost all of its sort of like kind of, to me, you know, I understand what Stuart is saying about this. Feels like it's kind of a, you know, it's an addition, it's like an addition roof, I suppose. But there's no way that we could repeat the angle of the upper sloped roof because it's so steep, and we only have 2 windows on the back of the house. We have to preserve the 2 windows. So part of this is just the practicality of building an addition on the back of a house.
I have a question. With the bay, when it hits your kitchen windows, I believe, it seems those the bay windows are just smack to that addition. The addition to addition is just so tight. And you talked about the equal distance from the original bay to the new bay on the front, keeping the windows the same size, but why it doesn't appear those 2 windows are the same size, and it appears there's no meat, for a better word, from addition to addition.
I mean,
Is there a purpose
yeah,
to
there's
that?
a piece of trim. I mean, again, I was trying to kind of accommodate the same size windows from that 45-degree angle bay, and that's kind of what the wall space was left. So, you know, I can reduce those windows, or, you know.
I think she might be talking about this on the rear.
Right, that corner
not
right
these
there.
3, but
okay.
these 2.
Yeah.
That was a specific request from my client to have a wider window on one side to be able to sit and look out at the cherry tree, and have one side of it be smaller so that it could be open for ventilation.
Can you
and
make?
it also is.
Oh, sorry.
I'm sorry.
Can you make the kitchen windows smaller so there's? I mean, that kitchen window also just seems to be smack to that corner. Is it your kitchen window?
Yeah, it's next
Yeah.
perpendicular to the patio doors.
Yeah.
Yeah.
In other words, if you
There's-
left the windows the same size but just did 2 of them and made more space around them.
Yeah. Yeah, there is trim between the windows on the corner, just like there's trim between the 2 taller ones in the corner. But yes.
So just to bring this back to the standards for review and construction, number 3, proportion of openings, and number 4, rhythm of solids and voids in the facade. So the rhythm of solid and void, I think, Thomas, that's what you were talking about?
Yes.
And it sounds like proportion of openings is what some of us are also talking about. I would like to make sure I understand, on the proposed south, so I'm on page 78. Proposed south facade, those 2 windows, they're aluminum clad wood doors and windows, that's the request to see the cherry tree?
The 2 windows on the, yes, the
Yeah.
far to right, yes.
So not the 3 windows that are all in a row?
Yes.
Okay. The 3 windows all in a row are there to repeat the vocabulary from the existing structure. And also there are 3 windows all in a row in the other, on the west side, proposed west side as well, right? Across.
Yeah, and those windows, the 3 kind of differently shaped windows that are in the square bay those are existing windows. So that kind of vocabulary of a thinner window and a wider window and a thinner window, even though that's a newer addition to the house, that vocabulary was there, and they would prefer not to remove those.
And so, Lisa, you were talking about the way in which those come together?
The intersection of the addition to the addition bay.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's all void, there's no solid.
Solid. There's no solid.
So I'm also looking that it's on, what is it, on the east and west side, you have those row of 3 windows that are matching the bays on either side.
That's right.
So that's why you're proposing those on either end of your addition, right, to match the bays that are on
the ones on the west side. We originally had that as like a wide kind of like a horizontal kind of really modern window. I mean, they really want to have the sort of interior of the space be sort of more modern. I thought for sure that wouldn't be something that you would like, so I took it out and changed it to the 3 windows in a row to kind of keep the language of everything else.
You know, on the west side, they're breathing a little.
They're breathing, yeah. I agree.
So I feel like it's the east side that we're talking about. I mean, this is the rear facade of a contributing building. Just as a reminder, this isn't a landmark, like individual landmark.
Can you speak to the proportions of this window here? And even if it was a different operating style and it's fixed,
Which one
the
were you
proportion seems so
Square one?
divergent from the double hung proportions.
I think what I was trying to do is, they want to kind of maximize the amount of space that's above the sink. And so that's kind of the space that you get above the 3-foot counter, but it also imitates the shape of the 3, the opening of the 3 patio doors together is that shape. It's sort of, it's like the top sash of some of the, the double hung windows on the front of the house. If you look at the back of the existing house has a big sort of horizontally shaped, that's the existing kitchen window right now. So I guess if we, to me, it looks funny to have it be tall and narrow. I think this is partly where kind of the sort of creativity or innovation of this kind of thing plays into this. Is to me, I kind of like the 3-dimensionality of it on the back of the house. That's sort of how I arrived at the proportion of that. But the main thing to me that catches me is it's the same proportion as the 3 patio doors. That sort of opening, it reads to me as the same shape.
I mean, it's interesting to look at the existing and the proposed together, because it's almost like you've, at least on the left side, you've just extruded the openings from what was there previously. The door is tight to the left, and it's now tight to the left. And there was a square double hung, which is always kind of an awkward proportion for a double hung anyways. And you just said, we'll just lose the check rail. And it's almost not quite in the same spot, but this is it. Yeah, I understand the plan and privacy, and that's totally fine. But it's kind of hard to appreciate the solid void that's different from what's there without understanding the reason why it's there. Because the double hung on the existing, on the rear south, has about the same amount of wall between the door and the Chicago style window to the east. And this one, it's kind of like slid over to the west a little bit, and there's a larger area of stucco to the right.
Thomas, if they were to make it a double hung window rather than, same shape and location and everything, just make it double hung, would it?
Well, it's a bay. It's also kind of, it's pulled out in 3D. So which is, it's
Right.
kind of like a modern feature. And I get, like, if the kitchen is modern, like, it's, you know, you're going for a modern interior, like the bay window doesn't really, I mean, the double hung doesn't fit as much.
And it's also, to me, I'd rather have this as a more modern window than an ugly proportioned double hung.
I guess when I look at the bay, though, I look around the house and it probably doesn't work, but like the west side, you know, there's a bay that's has about as much window, but the bay extends down, and it feels like a bay. Just the massing of that would seem more sympathetic to the house. But so to answer your question, no, I don't think it needs to be a double hung. Yeah.
So it wasn't the fact that it was not a double hung that was causing you to
I was
pause.
just running my mouth.
No, I get what he's saying, because it does look like it's this extruded window, and the rest of the house has, when there are extrusions, there's that proportion of it, you know, of finishing. It's not like a harsh 90-degree turn into the wall. It's kind of finished somehow with either going down or somehow, you know, some element that's
understandable. Yeah.
Yeah, it has sort of a context for it. I mean, we do want to encourage innovation, so there's that. Or we're supposed to be okay with innovation.
There is encouraging innovation, but I mean, I understand all of what's going on inside and why you've decided to have the roof the way it is. The elevation overall, the mass is kind of this symmetrical, you know, and then the roof kind of has this directionality where it's, you know, it looks like it's going one way instead of being a kind of a proportional roof in context of, but I don't know.
Can you, I know that you explained it, but now we understand the project a little bit better. Can you explain again why you have the hip on one side?
Because if I did the shed roof on the west side, because that first floor bumps out, I think I have it like 9 inches or something, from the front of the house, you would see the back of the shed, the wall of the shed roof, which to me would be really unattractive, and that you really would see from the street. So I don't know if you can do the 3D view from sort of the northwest corner.
Which page is that?
Maybe this page here. But you can see the way that the roof kind of, it almost looks like it's on the far back corner. Yeah, right there. It almost looks like it's kind of forming like a bay, and it kind of disappears. If that were a shed roof, that would go up and you would see a really harsh corner piece sticking up there. This is the way that I would have preferred to do the roof on the other side, but because of this bay, and even if we didn't extend that square bay with a window seat, that roof still does not, the lines just do not work with the hip roof.
In the view from the northwest, explain to us what's in the 9 inches that you've bumped out there.
That is it's a mudroom area, and it encompasses an existing kind of an approach to the stairs going down into the basement. They're inside, but it's really tight, that space, and there's headroom issues. There's all kinds of stuff going on in there.
I know we don't require plans, but in some cases, they're really helpful for us to understand why you've made certain decisions.
Yeah,
because it just seems that what we're saying in the absence of the plan is that the decisions that you've made to bump something out here or not align something here or repeat some windows here, without understanding why you made those choices, we're looking at it and saying, gee, the problem is it has no visual relationship to anything else about the house.
Yeah.
Except that addition on the side.
So he was prepared to do that, but our new form doesn't require it, and so and that's the reason why you're here, to answer questions. Yeah.
I had heard, maybe it's just something I'd heard.
Well, you're correct. We can't require it because of privacy issues. We can encourage it, and someone can willingly disclose it, but it's not something.
The other thing to consider is when you want to provide plans, you don't have to give us every last detail of of the floor plan. You could just give us a conceptual idea of what the rooms are and the uses so we can understand, I guess. So it's, we don't have to see where you're putting your oven and whatever, we don't need that, but we just. So.
Did you want to say something?
Yeah.
I'm the go ahead and introduce yourself.
Yeah, I'm Mark Figa. I'm the homeowner. The reason for making that a little bit wider is because we wanted to have a functional mudroom. Because of the entry into the house is coming from the garage. That's the main entry that we use regularly. And if we don't bump it out a little bit, then it doesn't have space for jackets and things of that nature. So it's a little bit wider so we can have like hooks and things in that space, so that it becomes more of a functional space to put our things as we come in to the house. And that's the reason to make it wider. Otherwise, so it adds additional functionality to the way we want to live in it.
Okay, thank you. So we're actually supposed to be deliberating, but we can be asking you questions.
No, that's fine. It's
fine.
I can sit down.
We'll invite you up again if we have more questions, as you know. Other deliberation? I mean, if we have nothing more to say, we should entertain a motion. Stuart, do you have anything more to say? No. All right, does anyone want to make a motion?
I'll make a motion.
Okay.
I move that for case 24 Pres 0068, 724 Colfax Street in the Northeast Historic District, that we grant a certificate of appropriateness to demolish a wood deck and stair and construct a single-story addition and new deck at the home's rear volume. The applicable standards are demolition 1 through 5, alteration 1 through 10, and construction 1 through 8, and 10 through 15.
Okay, do we have a second? Okay, we have a second. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Okay. Any abstain? All right, it was 4-3. Is that right? 4-3 no?
Can we,
Was that right?
yeah, that's correct, but I'd like to address some specific standards for the applicant so that they can reapply, so they know how to move forward.
All right, so the other, the vote is done, right? We
Correct.
can't encourage them to have a continuance?
You can't do a vote. That's like if you do this, well, you would approve it.
You could vote to reconsider. Someone can make a
So
motion.
someone on the prevailing side can make a motion to reconsider, and then we can discuss with the.
All right, so if those of you who have said no, if you would like to, one of you would like to make a motion to reconsider, we can give the applicant some direction and
continue it.
I'll make a motion to reconsider it.
Okay. Is there a second?
I'll second.
All right, it's been second. All in favor of reconsidering? Aye.
Aye.
Reconsidering is where we're going to reconsider this no vote, so that instead of just no, we have a conversation about some options for them, and then they can continue it and come back. Yeah.
So it becomes a continuation instead of a reapplying, right?
Yeah,
Okay.
or an approval with conditions,
Okay.
depending on how we want to do it. All right, all in favor of the reconsideration? Aye.
Aye.
All right, all opposed? Any abstain? Okay, so we're going to go back to deliberation now. So those of you who voted no, would you like to discuss again?
Sure. So the bay window at the kitchen is dissimilar to the way bays are treated on the rest of the house, and seems out of place. It creates more solid to the east than the original window had. So it just seems, I would refer to standard 4, the rhythm of solid to void on that back facade.
That's construction review standard number 4, rhythms of solid and voids and facades.
And in addition to that, the window on specifically the window, which I've already mentioned, the window on the east, the 3 windows, as Lisa put it, doesn't have any meat around it, the way the rest of the windows on the house have solid. No other windows just die into a corner. Yeah.
So that was
Construction 4.
construction, also hold on a sec. That was proportion of openings, so that's 3.
Construction 3. And
Yeah.
I've also heard at least considerable testimony around construction 8, roof shapes.
All right, so I'm going to look at you, Thomas.
Yeah.
So that second comment was specifically referring to proportion of openings, construction review number 3. That's a question.
With the windows on the side, because those proportion of windows exist on the house, I don't think that's the issue. The issue is solid to void. There's like solid on one side, and then the 3 windows, and then no solid. So
Okay,
that
so we're
pattern of
still-
solid to void doesn't exist on the house.
Okay, so we're still adjusting number 4. And then there was, thank you, and then there was some deliberation over roof shape, which is number 8.
Should
Is
we
that
go
correct?
through the standards for construction since they're cited?
Well,
Yeah, that's what I'm doing. I'm just trying to narrow it
I think
down.
that's what Chair Dreller is trying to do, is so we did, so we,
Proportion of facades, rhythm to solids and voids, rhythm
Stuart?
of spacing of structures. Oh,
Stuart?
sorry. Yes.
Yeah, so we were talking about number 4, review for construction, rhythm of solids and voids. And was it number 8 that you all were talking about with the roof? Yes. All right. The applicant wanted to say something. I just wanted, did you want to say something? I just wanted to make sure before to get the.
Thomas, you were saying the windows that die into the corner with no roof, you were saying that doesn't exist anywhere else in the house, but do you mean in the square bay or the 3 windows that we were proposing in the new addition? Because in the square bay, the windows do die into the house on the north side of that bay.
Right, as a bay, but not on the main plane of the house.
Okay, so
That's the
your
difference.
concern is the 3 windows.
You've got windows that are just jammed up against each other, and that doesn't really happen anywhere else in the house.
Yes, understood.
Yeah.
So we could continue talking about it like this, but I'm told that the other way of doing it is to say if you wanted to have a continuance, and then if there's a couple of commissioners that wanted to volunteer to sit down and talk to you about this, we could do it that way too, or we can continue talking.
Or both, but
I mean, we
sometimes
can continue.
Sometimes that's helpful as a way to offer just some technical assistance on something to try to meet the standards instead of this back and forth in the meeting. We'll get 2 or 3 commissioners and myself and you on a Zoom call or something and look at the plans and talk about it. You could also propose
If you wanna
changes
come to
and
the-
then send that, and then that's what they react to, that subgroup.
Yeah, I mean, I think I do have a good understanding of what your concerns are, and I think I have some ideas on how to fix them. So if you would want me to, I could revise the drawings, send them. Yeah, I'd be happy to do that.
Yeah, I mean, the idea with the reconsideration was to give you a little bit of guidance. So if you feel you have enough guidance, unless there's somebody else that has something else, that additional guidance you'd like to provide.
The only thing that I would add is like the justification for the mass going out on the west. That makes sense. So that's just so that you know that, at least for where I'm coming from, I don't have a problem with that. Just to be clear.
Okay.
Anyone else want to provide guidance? All right, so we need to have a vote. Carl, go ahead.
I'm just trying to understand. So are we agreeing now that if we make a motion to reconsider, the applicant does their change in design and then comes back, does that go through pre-review again then before or does it come straight to the commission again?
Go ahead.
I was just going to say, typically, there's not enough time for the applicant to turn around something that's revised to meet when I would send for pre-review, and that's the idea of getting, 1, 2, 3 commissioners together.
Right.
That then whenever he submits that, there's at least some kind of initial reaction and maybe an opportunity to make final tweaks, and then it comes before the full
Because
commission.
the reason I'm asking is because I want to give sufficient time to you to come up with a solution to what we've talked about. And if you don't feel that a month is enough, I mean, we could we potentially make it a motion to have it at a future commission meeting, so he has sufficient time?
So you can, the commission can make a motion to continue to just the next meeting without the consent of the owner and the applicant. If you're making a motion to continue to a date certain that's in the future, beyond that, it would require their consent. And there's also no August meeting.
That's what I was going to say. There's no August meeting.
That's right. And I don't want to
So
draw this out longer.
That goes
than
until September.
I just want to make sure that you have sufficient time to respond to. So.
I'm happy to kind of do a Zoom call with who, if I mean, I could do it tomorrow if people want to, we don't need a bunch of time to pass just to have time pass, I'm happy to do this quickly.
And I'm sure your client would rather not take longer than it needs to.
We should, okay. So it's what I hear everyone saying is that we're going to vote on a continuance, 1 month continuance, and that the applicant has enough feedback to move forward and is open to working with a couple of commissioners. And in the meantime, there are a couple of commissioners that are open to meeting with him, right? Yes? Okay. All right. So do we have a motion to continue?
I'll make a motion to continue 24 Pres 0068 724 Colfax Street. And I guess the focus should be on standards for review of construction 4 and 8.
All right. Is there a second?
Oh, and also that there will be a Zoom meeting with the applicant to talk over the app.
I second.
All right. It's been second. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Any abstain? Okay. Motion carries. Moving on to the next item of business, approval of meeting minutes, minutes of May 14th, 2024. Does anyone have any comments about it? About those minutes? Okay. Seeing none, we will assume approval. Item number 6, discussion, no vote will be taken, the Cultural Heritage Awards. The Cultural Heritage Awards deadline is coming up in August, so we will have another meeting between now and then. We can talk about this again. But I just wanted to let you all know that I did go to the Arts Council. I did a short presentation there. We had to, it was maybe about 6 minutes, and then a little bit of discussion after that. And I focused primarily on the fact that the Cultural Heritage Awards are designed, this new program is designed to make it possible to celebrate people who are doing cultural heritage work, but not necessarily, or carrying forward cultural heritage, but not necessarily through the medium of the built environment, that they are doing things that are not only architectural. So that opens an opportunity to honor other ways of carrying forward tradition. And so the Arts Council was very open to that. And they had some interesting questions for me, which is one of the reasons why Kate thought I should update you guys on this. One, they were interested in knowing actually what the Preservation Commission does. They were quite surprised that our Cultural Heritage Awards were open to non-architectural, we'll say, modes. So I explained a little bit about the C of A process, which is the most visible thing that we do. And then I started talking about long-range planning and the Preserve 2040, and they were like, what's Preserve 2040? So then I had to bring them up to speed on that. So it just, it kind of was clear that we all know what Preserve 2040 is, but not necessarily the rest of the world, so we need to just keep talking about that. But they were quite excited about Preserve 2040 and about possibilities actually, most of the conversation ended up being about that, about possibilities for the Arts Council to help us kind of carry out some of the initiatives in Preserve 2040. So that is, yes. So they are going to put, or I hope maybe they did, put the Cultural Heritage Awards, our Cultural Heritage Awards program in their newsletter to try to spread the word, which is great. And at least 3 people on the Arts Council wanted a copy of the Preserve 2040 in order to try to find ways of partnering with us. So that's good too. And it was all in all a very positive conversation. I gather that theirs are not, their meetings are not live streamed or recorded, so you can't go back and watch it. One thing that I did want to just mention as part of this conversation is that I don't think we have an image yet, or like a flyer yet. There was nothing to give to them. So that's, is there any ETA on that? There's no ETA on a flyer. Are we allowed to make a flyer, or do we have to wait for the city's graphic folks to do it? I mean, the image is fine, but I feel like we need something to sort of share, and it's been going now for a month. You know, I didn't have like something to give to them apart from the link and the stuff. Carl, you look like you have
No,
something to say.
I'm just thinking because it, I mean, you know, we have it in emails, we've discussed it at meetings, but I mean, a flyer would be a good way of, you know, like on a bulletin board at Noyes Cultural Arts Center or at the Levy Center or something, just where there are potential people that could, you know, apply,
I mean, it did
get interested or know people that would apply.
Yeah, I mean, if we're trying to sort of open and push past our bubble and get to people who are doing non-architectural things, then we have to take, you know, a different route. That's the same idea that we took for the recruitment also. So otherwise, we're always talking to the same people all the time, and they're doing architectural stuff. So, but I actually was thinking that if we had a digital flyer, then that would be something that we could post on LinkedIn, and we could email to people, and they could email to other people, and it's just something that has some, like, all of the information gathered in one place, or all of the basic information gathered in one place. So the City of Evanston's graphic folks, marketing folks haven't done that. So, yeah. So it would be great if we could have something like that.
Yeah, and if I'm just thinking if I were charged with that as the graphic designer, you know, what's the image? And it's a bit more challenging because the other awards are, it's a historic building in Evanston. So I'm just wondering, like, just like we like to leave folks with a little guidance, just to kind of.
So the image, I actually think the image that we've been using is okay. It's a mural that Cade found. The image that was in the newsletter when we announced this, our newsletter when we announced it, is a mural. So remind us which. Do you have a picture?
I don't know if I have the picture.
Oh. Well, anyway,
handy. It's actually from ironically from the Arts Council's Mural Arts program.
Okay. So I mean, I thought that image was fine, but the image in itself isn't something that we can sort of share. You know, it feels like we need to have something that with a flyer that says this is Cultural Heritage Awards Preservation Commission, and so anyway, you know, if somebody wants to help draft something like that, that would be great. I think it would help to promote the Cultural Heritage Awards. Anyway, so that's what I wanted to say about Cultural Heritage Awards. Wanted to make you aware of that. Was there anything else you wanted to say? Okay. All right. Did anyone have any comments about the cultural? Okay, go ahead.
It's not about the awards. It's about something else.
Can we add stuff? We can add things to the agenda. Go ahead.
I just sitting through that ADU. Is there a chance that we can, as a board, and I know you're so busy, but can we review the ADU requirements? Because it seems that this might not be unusual I mean, scale and all that kind of stuff. It met all the criteria. I'm working on one in Oak Park, and I'm running into the same thing. It's like maybe the ADU needs to be a scale of the main house or something. Do we have?
I think it's the only reason that I would say that it's a nice opportunity is because we are rewriting the zoning ordinance, which would include some of this. I checked during the meeting. What it says is just the way that they define kind of subordination between the two is they do it by floor area, which is a little strange. It's just that the floor area of the ADU has to be less than the floor area of the principal structure.
Correct. Right.
So by its very nature that it's one story versus any two-story structure, the subordination is kind of met through the code, but not necessarily probably the way it's intended, or even the definition in the code of what an accessory structure is. Again, it would be a nice opportunity to have even like a percentage.
Right, exactly.
I mean,
And we run into similar issues with dormers too, where we talk about proportions of the opening in the dormer. A lot of codes have that as the ratio between wall to window is, 75% to 25% or something. But ours is just full of ambiguity, and that's part of why we're rewriting it. So yes, it's a nice opportunity if you have ideas and suggestions.
But the scale conversation during that application was about the standards for review.
I understand that,
Yeah.
But still there's a conflict, right?
I don't know.
Yeah.
That's maybe the point, right? We don't know. All right. I'm going to adjourn the meeting. It is 10:03 p.m. Thank you very much.